What's up YouTube, Dell here from Zephyr, and today I'm going to be bringing you an Odion Fiendsmith profile. Now this one is just going to be full of information so that you know about the Odion strategy, as it is insanely powerful anti-meta kind of cool. Technically it could even be considered as meta. Now I took this to a regional this weekend. It didn't go that great for me because I ended up facing all of the matchups I didn't want to face. So I ended up facing 3 Odion matchups, and basically in all 3 of those I ended up either losing the dice roll or I bricked massively. Outside of that, I ended up facing Tempai Buster Blader, which really caught me off guard. I was able to, in game 1, hold off the Tempai, and then as I was trying to move in for game, they were able to activate the Buster Blader trap card, which I was like, what? And then Buster locked me, and I was like, this is crazy. Game 2 I was able to win that, and in game 3 we ended up going into time, and that was ultimately a draw. Other than that, I ended up facing Ancient Gear, and I faced 2 Malice. 1 Malice I was able to win because I ended up winning a dice roll. The other one I lost the dice roll. So you can kind of see where I'm going with the whole Odion strategy being a little bit more reliant on the dice roll outcome. But I thought this would be good to kind of show you the strategy, explain what it is, show you a demo side deck for it as well, and then talk about what changes I may or may not make. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. So, going with your starters, we do go with the best normal summon of the entire deck, being your Man with the Mark. The reason I say it's the best is because your other normal summon is if you hard open up Lacrima, and we'll talk about that later on. So your Man with the Mark is the ability on normal or special to take a Temple of the Kings or a spell and trap that mentions it from the deck and either add it to the hand or send it to the graveyard. 99.999% of the time you're going to be adding it to the hand, and 80% of the time you're going to be grabbing Treasures of the King. The last 20% of the time you might actually grab Temple of the Kings. Now, some people do play the Anubis Last Judgment, the Anubis Counter Trap. In this particular hybrid version, you don't really need to. I feel in the other version, when you play more Temple of the Kings and everything else, it's a little bit more consistent. While you control Temple of the Kings, this card and Apophis monster you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. And then keeping in mind as well, Temple of the Kings you control cannot be destroyed by card effects, and the Treasures of the Kings become Temple of the Kings while it's on the field. Then another route to your starter will, of course, be your Anubis, the Last Judge. Now, this is actually insanely good because not only does it get you to your Man with the Mark, yes, of course, one of the biggest downsides of this deck is Draw and Lockbird, and I felt that that's where the Fiendsmith engine had a better, better resilience than the pure version, and I'll talk about more of the Fiendsmiths when we get there in a second. So it can't be normal summon set, it must first be special summoned from your hand or graveyard while you have 3 or more cards in your graveyard with different names that are Temple of the Kings and or traps, by placing 2 of them on the bottom of the deck in any order. But then the main effect you're going to be using more times than not is you send this card from the hand to the graveyard to add a Man with a Mark from the deck to the hand, and then if a spell or trap you control is destroyed by card effect, you get to target a card your opponent tries and destroy it. Very rare that happens because you're mainly going to be bringing Anubis back from the graveyard as that enabler to get you more aggression on the field, and very rarely do you leave it on the field for that effect. Then you do play the 1 Merciless Scorpion Circuit. Now this card's, again, really kind of cool. It is a bit of a brick because it does require so many different things in the way, but it kind of is a little bit more reliant on the Fiendsmith variant because this can act as your extender, which can then work you into Moon. But the idea is, again, common normal summon the set must be special summoned from the hand by banishing a level 10 or higher monster from your hand or deck while you control Temple of the Kings. You can only special summon it once per turn, and then once per turn during your main phase you get to add a Temple of the Kings or a spell that mentions it from the deck to the hand. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you get to destroy that monster, and if you do, this card gains attack equal to half the destroyed monster's original attack. So it is good as an extender, it can be good as a bit of an aggressor, but I can kind of understand that in maybe a pure version you might want to not play it, but the idea is that you would go normal summon Man with the Mark, grab you Treasures of the King, activate Treasure of the King, set one of your Apophis traps, set another trap card or any card really, use the effect of this, grab your Circuit, summon the Circuit by banishing even Nibiru because it's level 10 or higher, or your Anubis, summon it down. Those 2 either make your Silo Hat Rabbit or of course they can make your Moon, and then you work your way through the Fiendsmith engine. Then of course 3 Treasure of the King. When it's activated, you set an Apophis trap from the deck to the field. Again, 99.999% of the time you're going to be going for the Apophis Serpent. The only times you won't go for that is if you hard open it and then you go for your Swamp Deity. So then on top of that as well is once per turn, if you have 2 or more set cards on your field or a trap in your graveyard, you get to add a monster that mentions Temple of the Kings from the deck to the hand. You can only activate 1 Treasure of the King per turn. So the really important thing about that is if you already have a Treasure of the King face up on your first turn and you do all of the effects, and then it goes to your opponent's turn and then back to your turn, and you have another Treasure of the King in hand, you can still activate the effect of Treasure of the King to grab you a monster that mentions it from the deck to the hand. Then you activate another Treasure of the King, and then you get to use both effects again. So you'd get to activate, you'd then get to set a trap card, but then you can also use the effect to search out a monster again. Very restricted a little bit in the moment, because the only benefit you'll get off of that is you can just go, like, you could search out a Circuit if you haven't already. You would search out the Anubis would then search out your Man with a Mark. So that's the only benefit you do, but you also make sure you just gain a lot of resource for the follow-up in the grind game. Then we do play the 1 Temple of the Kings. In this version, you really do kind of cut back on some of these just because of the route to get to it, and because you're playing the Fiendsmith engine. When you take out the Fiendsmith engine, which I will talk about the alternatives later on, that's when you can start opening up the door. Some players choose to play a 2nd Temple of the Kings. Some players will also choose to play the original Apophis trap card. You might also consider to play the counter trap that I've already mentioned. So you kind of just open up the door for some other options. So the other one that you would end up playing, just so that everyone's clear, is the embodiment of the Apophis, because this one could be searched once your Apophis Serpent gets sent to the graveyard by any means. So your main Apophis trap card as well, which you do bump up to 2 in the pure version. So you special on this card as a normal monster, as a reptile level 4, is also still a trap card. So the benefit of something like that is, even though it's a monster in the monster zone and it doesn't take up a spell and trap zone anymore, if your opponent has MST, they can destroy it, or like Lightning Storm or anything like that, and they can call spells and traps and it will destroy these. Even if they're in defense, it just deals with the background because they're still counted as a trap card, it will destroy those, so keep that in mind. So the reason this is so good, because the idea is that you get to activate at turn 0 with Temple of the Kings. If it's activated, you get to set an Apophis Serpent directly from the deck. So you get to go for... you get to set an Apophis trap, accept itself from the deck, which you're going for your Apophis deity, and it can be activated this turn. So this one will then allow you to activate the Apophis Swamp Deity only during the main phase. It's the only one that has that main phase restriction, so evenly matched is also a very, very good call against this deck, and that's something that I missed out at during the regional. I was umming and ahhing about evenly matched or not. I decided not to go with evenly matched because I've read this. I kind of ignored them during the main phase parts. I was like, they'll just negate with the Swamp Deity. And then I really wish I had evenly matched, because if I had evenly matched in my matchups, I would have gone so much better in the mirror. So this one comes out as a level 6 as a normal monster, but the benefit of this one is you get to negate the effects of face-up cards your opponent controls up to the number of other continuous traps you control until the end of the turn. So the benefit is you activate the Apophis the Serpent, you activate the Swamp Deity. As the chain comes backwards, the Apophis deity summons itself, and then it still sees the Apophis as a face-up trap card in the spell and trap zone, so it will negate at that point, and it's non-target. But it will also negate if the Apophis is face-up as a monster, because obviously it's still treated as a trap. So very important on that one. That's what makes it so good. It means that you can chain to stuff like Harpy's Feather Duster, Lightning Storm, and other cards like that. Then for another supporting engine is the 1 Lord of the Heavenly Prisons. I just like this. There were so many times where I had Man with a Mark and then I was summoning out the Apophis Serpent. I was like, I'll overlay them into Gallant Granite, search out Lord of the Heavenly Prison. This then becomes a little bit more relevant for the side deck, because that's when you'll start to see very specific side deck meta choice cards. But the idea is you reveal this, not only do you protect your back row, which can be very important if your opponent hard opens up a Feather Duster. And I kind of messed up in my first round because I didn't respect the Harpy's Feather Duster as much. I didn't open up that well. Like, I hard opened up the Lord and I had 1 set card, and I revealed the Lord and I was like, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way into a card. I forgot to activate Temple of the Kings. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was that I activated the trap card during the draw phase, summoned it down, and then summoned down Lord of the Heavenly Prisons. And completely messed it up, and my opponent hard opened up half his Feather Duster, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's on me. But it's still a really kind of cool card, because the idea is you get access to any of your trap cards, and then with Temple of the Kings, you can activate it that turn. So a lot of players will consider stuff like different Dimension Grounds, you've got Dimension Barrier you can consider, you've got Artifact Sanctum to get you directly to an Artifact Lancia, you've also got Imperial Iron Wall, which can be quite devastating, and then you kind of just cherry pick the ones. I know some people are on Tyrant's Throne, where it lets you tribute 2 normal monsters, which will be your Apophis Serpents, and then neither player can special summon effect monsters. And the idea is that at that point, you would have a Scylla Hat Rabbit at the very least, and then Lord of the Heavenly Prisons. And then you'd hopefully be having 2 more of these, so that basically the way you work back is you summon your normal monsters, and then you can push through for game. 1 Pot of Prosperity and the 1 Statue of Anguish Pan. This card's just insane. Like, this is an old card from, it's not Crossover Breaker, but Basically, the idea is it's very, very old. It summons itself as a effect monster as a level 7 with 2500 defense, so it's quite a big booty to deal with. But then it also cannot be targeted while you control another trap card that is a monster. If a card is special summoned from your spell and trap zone to a monster zone while this card is a monster, you can target a card on the field and destroy it. That's not a once per turn. So you just go, okay, cool. Activate Apophis, a serpent. Resolve that, pop a card. Activate Apophis Swamp Deity, negate 2 cards off of the Swamp Deity, pop a card off of this. Activate a second Swamp Deity, negate 3 cards, pop a card off of this. Like, it's just insane. And then the Fiendsmith engine. So the one big difference with my Fiendsmith engine is I went with 3 tracked. Then the reason I decided to go with 3 tracked over 3 engraver, which I only played 2 of, was for the pure fact that I was like, right, well, track can be set, so it actually helps out my Temple of the Treasure of the King's route and everything else. But then I also was like, well, if I have Engraver, I don't want to see Engraver in my hand, because if I see Engraver, I activate Engraver, I search track, I get Droll. And I knew Droll was going to be around. Like, Droll was probably in like 80% of people's main decks, if not a little bit higher. So I was like, you know what, if I open up Tracked, I'd much rather, especially when I open up Tracked and Temple of the Kings or Man with the Mark, Treasure of the King, you name it, I'd much rather open up Track, because if I activate Tracked, search out a Lurry, discard the Lurry, and they Droll me, I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. My Lurry comes back, I then go full Fiendsmith combo. I can still get into the Silo Hat Rabbit, I can still get a card set and work from there. Whereas if I was to go normal summon down Man with the Mark, search out Treasure of the King, they Droll me, I'm like, okay, well, unless my rest on my hand, like the remaining 4 cards in my hand, are some sort of Apophis trap cards that have been hard opened, which I'm only playing like 1s and 2s of, it can't really let me get any further. So the one Lacrima. Now, the only reason that this is a slightly better normal summon is if you normal summon this and attempt to use the effect and they imperm it, Veiler it, Ash it, or stop it, you can still go off into Requiem. Requiem still makes Shield of Plays, whereas the Man with the Mark doesn't do that, which is why I prefer the Blue Eyes version, because what that does is the Blue Eyes version gives the Man with the Mark their own Requiem. And what I mean by that is you'd go Man with the Mark, baits out an impermanent Ash, a Veiler, whatever, you turn it into the Link 1, and then you search out your field spell, and as long as you've got another level 1 light tuner to additional normal summon, you can then move your plays further forward. Fabled Lurry, Fiendsmith Paradise, I saw this in my hand way too much. There's even more reason for me to want to cut this engine, but the engine is just generally good. It's just such a good grind engine, and it really does kind of separate when it gets going. If it never gets going, or it's the only thing that gets going, it's not really going to help you, because you can go from the Temple of the Kings into the Fiendsmith engine, but you can't go from, the Apophis or the Odion cards into the Fiendsmiths, but you can't go the other way around, so it's very tricky. Main deck of the Fluoros, it's kind of one of the ones that you need to have that benefit of if you don't win the dice roll, you need a card in your deck that will really restrict your opponent building the field, or if they do decide to play into the Fluoros, which I can't think of any scenario that I've actually played in where they've played into the Fluoros. If at anything, you choose to activate Fluoros when you put them in a position where they have to make a summon from the edge deck or the main deck, so you're guaranteed to get at least 1 draw to replace itself. So yeah, you kind of have to have that. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I would still much rather play the first place one from the American Regional that didn't play Fluoros, but they played 3 Evenleads and 3 Ultimate Slayers. But then they did say that they didn't own the Mole Chummies. So maybe you want that benefit of being able to play Mole Chummy, then maybe even playing main deck in Evenly Matched or the Ultimate Slayer. For the other hand, Trash, Draw, Not Bird, I knew this was going to be everywhere. Triple Ash Blossom. Double Nibiru, obviously, if you go first, you banish it from the deck with your Saket. If you go second, then of course the idea is you can just Nibiru your opponent. And yes, I'm not even going to apologise for all the golds. Even my Lances, I specifically went out of my way to make sure that all my Hat and Traps, well, that were possible to be gold, were gold. I also do wish that I played Ghost Ogre for the pure fact that, especially in the free matchups with the Temple of the Kings, sometimes they're ones where they don't have Man with the Mark. But the chances are, more times than not, they have Man with the Mark on the field, so it's not that great. But I felt that Ghost Ogre could have separated a few people. Triple Infinite Impermanence. And then the final one is Triple Dominus Purge. I actually really like this card. The one big thing that always scares me on this one is remembering that if I've used Dominus Purge from the hand, I can't use Ash Blossom. And that was something that I always focused on a little bit more, is I had to remember not to be able to use Darks, Waters, and Fires. Now, luckily for me, the only Dark that was in my extra deck was Typhon, SP Little Knight, Agigator, and Chaos Angel, and of course Neko Quip. But by the time I've used those, or like I don't need to use those if I'm going second. So that was one thing that kind of concerned me, because what I didn't want to do is activate a card like that and then put it into an irreparable game state, and then my opponent notices and then calls judge, and I was like, I don't want to be dealing with something like that. So that was my one big concern. I never did it. I was able to kind of focus on it enough that it doesn't happen. But I do feel that there probably are times out there where you will face someone playing Dominus Purge or Impulse, and they may forget that restriction and just play a card, and not many people will notice it. Then for the extra deck, we do play 2 of the Divine Serpent Apophis. I really love this card. I never made it twice. Because I was on the Gallant Granite version, the idea is that you either make Gallant Granite because you overlay the Apophis Serpent, or you make the Divine Serpent Apophis. And I feel that's where the pure version comes in a lot better, because then you don't mind, like if you play a second Apophis Serpent, you don't mind having it put under Gallant Granite so that you can't use it to make the Divine Serpent. So either or. This one obviously searches you out a rock monster from the decks. This will get you access to your Lord of the Heavenly Prisons, or of course Nibiru. But this one must either be fusion summoned using 2 monsters that mention Temple of the Kings, or special summoned by triggering 2 Apophis monsters. Once per turn you get to target up to 3 Apophis traps with different names in your graveyard, set them. And then once per turn, if a trap card is activated except during the damage state, you target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. So it's a soft once per turn, so if you have 2 Apophis, you get to pop 2 cards, which is really kind of cool. Typhon, I think it's just such an important meta call right now. Like, just being able to make Typhon bounce the detonator. And as you could hear at the start of the video, I never faced any Yugioh. I was like, what the hell? I was semi-prepared for Yugioh and I never faced any. Silo Hat Rabbit, this is another reason why I quite like the idea of the pure version, is because I can play this at 2. And I do like what you can kind of add to the deck and everything else in between. Then we've got the 1 Link Spider. The idea is that most of your Link monsters, if not all of the Link monsters apart from your Fiendsmith cards, require you to have effect monsters. And when I say Fiendsmith cards, I'm talking about sequence. It requires you to have effect monsters. So all of your Apophis track cards are normal monsters, so they need to be turned into an effect monster to then be able to do anything. SP Little Knight, I think I maybe made it once, if that. Agigator was for Ultimate Slayer. Never saw Ultimate Slayer, but very rarely did I put it in because I never faced blimmin' Yugioh. Chaos Angel, made it once. It is what it is. Like, the other thing that I don't like about the Fiendsmith engine is, now that you'll see this, the Fiendsmith engine takes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 slots in the extra deck, and I don't like that. So I'm definitely changing out the Fiendsmith engine. And I'm not even playing Agmunday. That was another one that I was like, Agmunday or not? And ultimately I decided not to do it. Chaos Angel is really good. DD Wave King is also pretty good. I never got nibbed. I don't know, I tell you that back. I got nibbed once, but they nibbed me when I had SP and Chaos Angel on the field, so I used SP to banish both, and I dodged it. But yeah, the Wave King's really kind of cool. The Neko Quip I actually made more times than not, because I was finding myself going into Neko Quip, and what I liked about it is you would make this, you'd still put your opponent in a position of a nib check, and you'd probably hope that by the time you make the Neko Quip, your opponent doesn't have an Ash or a Droll or anything. So I would activate the Anubis to add me a Man with a Mark, and then I'd be able to trigger Neko Quip's effect to draw me a card. Then I'd bring back the Engraver and then overlay into Wave King. Of course, if I needed to, I could go into the Silo Hat Rabbit, which again was absolutely fine if I decided to do that. Never made Desiree, only ever sent it with Paradise, and I only did Paradise once. Requiem, you make it like every single time. Sequence, I think I made it once and I messed up because, again, I forgot that it needed Engraver. This is like how I just don't play the Fiendsmith engine enough. So I, rather than going into Still a Hat Rabbit, I got greedy and went into Sequence when I didn't need to. And then I realised in my graveyard that I had already spun back the Engraver earlier on in the combo. And then Moon is pretty standard. But I can't wait to get rid of these and start opening up the extra deck for stuff like Abyss Dweller, if that survives the ban list. Abyss Dweller and a second Silo Hat Rabbit, and just so much more, basically. Moving on to the side deck very quickly. Standard on this one, triple answer. No one likes... Like, I don't mind playing Malice, but you don't want to be facing Malice. Like, it can be incredibly powerful. I decided to go with 2 Perulia and 2 Meowis. I never saw Meowis. I saw Perulia once. It was absolutely fine. It was just kind of had those balance for the matchups. Like, if Floros wasn't that great, or if you were in a specific matchup that was going to be more helpful for you, you needed more chances of going second. And I decided to go with these. In all honesty, I would probably much rather play evenly matched. I really do. I think evening match would be better. Like, I'd much rather go second with Floros and then one of these and try and draw into evening match to help me break fields. Because these are any of the mole chummies, ultimately, apart from Perulia, like I actually put Perulia in against the Odion strategy. Because I was like, if they're playing pure Odion, at the very least, in the draw phase, I'll activate Perulia, they'll normal summon Man with the Mark, I'll get a draw off the back of it. And then if they decide to go, if they need to go for Circuit, I'll get another draw off it. So I can kind of guarantee 2 off of that. But if they're playing pure, they pretty much either don't need to go into the extra deck or they go into the extra deck once. So I was like, Perulia is going to be better for me than the Floros. True Ultimate Slayer, never saw it. Double Lightning Storm, saw it once or twice against Odions, but then obviously they just negate it, so like useless. Gold Harpy Feather Duster, 1 D Barrier, and 1 Imperial Iron Wall. This was like, I put this in the Malice matchup, and I had Lord of the Heavenly Prisons, like I had the combo set, but this was in game 2, so I never actually wanted to reveal that I was on this, which is why I held back the Lord of the Heavenly Prisons. And what was good about the Lord is it just still activated, it kind of acted at this as this deterrent, because a lot of people didn't want to destroy it, like try and destroy my back row, because they were like, well, it's not going to get destroyed. So it's actually a very big deterrent against Lightning Storm. So you just basically waited until they committed a card to the field, and then if you activate a trap card, you bring down Lord. So that's pretty much it. I hope I've gone into as much detail as possible with this one. This isn't so much like, hey, look how well I did with this deck, because it didn't go well. This is more so, hey, be warned, this deck is actually frightening. It's very, very powerful. I do like it. I like the way that it works. And again, quite like Blue Eyes, I like the fact that it has variation. I like that you can play it pure, you can play it with Kashtira's, you can play it with Fiendsmith. And I feel that maybe a Fiendsmith version, more people will be on it once the Fiendsmith cards get released in Stampede, which is like end of this... well, we're now in April, actually, so this video will be going out on the 2nd of April. So in like a couple of weeks' time, like I'm pretty sure it's due 2nd week of April. Or third week of April. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put them in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. Shout out to all my opponents. It was actually a really, really good day at Bedford Regional Geek Retreat. Very well organised. There was a couple of bits of confusion on my round with Tempai, but that was just kind of like a misunderstanding of what I had understood from a previous event, and I kind of misunderstood the Tempai level 10 and kind of passing priorities, but that was like quite easily fixed. And yeah, it kind of wasted all of our time. So I do apologise for that one. It was just a misunderstanding. But yeah, other than that, all my opponents were really kind of fun, all really kind of cool. And especially my last round opponent. Apologies, I don't have the names to hand. But my last round opponent, he was on Apophis Fiendsmith as well. But we ended up having a really good chat afterwards. And we talked about the different variants and the contemplation between Fiendsmith and Pure, and yeah, it was kind of cool. And even like to be fair, all of my Apophis players were really, really fun. I think like round 4 or 5 was kind of cool as well. We had like they were all really good grind games. That's what I liked about this deck, is that it gave opponents issues. No game was really rapid unless I bricked massively. It was actually a really good back and forth. And for me as the player of the Odion deck, it was a lot more of, I've got stuff to activate and activating them at the right time, and it really made me think, and I did enjoy that. It wasn't as simple as like, okay, I guess I just make this card and pass. It was a lot of, like, unless you brick, it was like a lot of thinking, a lot of back and forth, and I really enjoyed it. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Yeah, till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.